What's up, everybody? Time for another game theory video. The nerdy ones, the really nerdy ones. Maybe if you like the video, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate things. So I posed that question to you, and even after this video, you can post if you want. Can you actually come up with better EX moves than I can? Can you come up with basically a better way to rejuvenate Street Fighter? Make it not so homogenized, right? Can you make Street Fighter better? Come up with something I can't. That's actually a good idea. And if you actually come up with something better than me, I don't have so much of an ego that I would just say your idea sucks. Because if you come up with something better than me, you're only making Street Fighter better, right? Isn't that what we all want? We want Street Fighter to be a better game, right? So I want to focus on this guy's comment because there's a potentially interesting idea there. But before I get into this guy's thing, and this is about the rolento one. And again, if you want me to ever do any characters, or if you have ideas, by all means, put it back. And of course, some hater will be like, "Oh, Clayton, what do you know about video games? Blah blah. What do you know about game design?" Well, I don't know how to code a game. I don't know anything about that. But I do know that no one else in the community in the history of fighting games has done what I've done tech-wise in video games. And I've been able to predict games for over 20 years now, I think, without ever even playing them, just by looking at the footage. So until you do that, calm down, little Timmy. So anyway, before I get to this guy's exact thing, and we're going to talk about this, and you might want a screenshot because this guy does go over a lot of different stuff, right? So we're not going to read the exact thing, but you can read it, and I will comment about how I interpreted it. Okay. So the first thing a guy was asking, well, what about Omega Vega in Street Fighter 4? I looked at the Omega stuff because I don't remember what it was. And looking at it again, I would say generally it's terrible to me. He's got some fucking, like, what does he do? Let's look at this claw. We'll draw right here. I mean, absolutely terrible. Omega Vega has some move where he jumps straight up and then flies forward. It looks like a complete Mugen move. It's comically bad. He also has a thing where he can, instead of jumping off the wall and wall dive, he jumps off and he does a dive kick. Wow, big brain. I mean, it's retarded. It's not interesting whatsoever. The only thing interesting about Omega Vega looking at it was that I like the idea of claw pushes you back further, and without the claw, you have different kind of links because you're closer. I think that's kind of interesting. But in general, Omega Vega, like most of those Omega characters, they're complete Mugen. It's comical. It's terrible. It's not interesting whatsoever. I'm not impressed. So, no. And I also got asked, what about a character like Kyo? If you're to do EX moves for Kyo. And I would say that, well, if you're talking about Kyo, what Kyo are we even talking about? We got like Fireball Kyo. And even there's like a new school Fireball Kyo. There's also 96, 98 Fire Punch Kyo. And then there's two different kinds of Nest Kyos. So there's a lot of different kind of Kyos that you could do. But I will say what sticks out to me immediately if I was going to be making a EX move for a Kyo. You know, in the Neo Geo Battle Coliseum game, when he does the final showdown, my namesake, the level 1, although it animates terribly in that game. I don't know why they changed the explosion, but I digress. You know, he does the taunt at the end. When you actually do the taunt, he goes into a custom combo mode for a while. That sticks out to me as an easy sort of EX move you could do in a game, right? Level 1 final showdown combo, waste the EX bar to do the taunt, and the taunt actually has a purpose. That's cool. So the Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. And also thinking about that, Kyo also has in the hard punch combo, he has the fucking the 99 win pose where he explodes you and you get a combo off it. Those are two moves exactly that automatically come into my brain that would be EX moves in a game that was not trying to be homogenized, right? But again, there's so many different Kyos. What are we even talking about? But anyway, let's get into this guy's thing, right? So again, if you want to read the whole thing, because there's a lot to read, as I lose my fucking, where's my shit? There we go. So again, read it yourself if you want, and this is as I interpret what he's saying. So if I'm interpreting wrong, by all means, correct me. So again, the first idea here doesn't make any sense to me. So the idea that rolento would have a EX throw break, right? An EX throw break already automatically implies that it only happens if the other guy is attacking you, right? And so then, I mean, I guess if you're trying to throw the guy with two buttons, so either you throw the guy with two buttons and you don't waste the EX bar, or if he were trying to throw you and you're pressing two buttons to break the throw, he automatically gets damaged and explodes. I don't see the risk reward for that. This the first the second idea is more mentally interesting. The first idea makes no sense to me because what is the downside to it? Rolento throughout the entire match would always be throwing with two punches then. Right? It doesn't make any sense to me. And unlike something like, say, if we were to compare it to something like Vega, where Vega in Super Turbo, when you do his wall dive super, and the super only occurs if he throws you, right? That's still you initiating the action. And the super is, let's say, somewhat niche in Super Turbo. It doesn't get used that often. It's not probably what you would think of as one of the better supers, right? And maybe because it's not one of the better supers, maybe you could even make an argument for that's why it doesn't even occur. It doesn't waste the bar unless you do it. I'm sure Devil's Advocate might say that. But for this, yeah, I don't understand the first one. The first idea doesn't make any sense to me because why would you not always just be throwing with two punches? So either you throw the guy and you don't waste a meter, and if he were ever to try to throw you, then he gets damaged. Like, it doesn't make any... What is the disadvantage of it then? It just would make throwing rolento a bad idea, period. Now, the second idea I think is thought-provoking, and I had to give myself a clarity nut, right? I had to think about it, right? I had to listen to some... I wasn't thinking about you. I don't know what you look like. You could be a girl. I see Dominus Maximus. I don't know who Dominus Maximus is. It could be a pseudonym or an alias. You could be extremely attractive in female, right? But whatever the case, I thought about your question, not about you, but while listening to ASMR, giving myself a clarity nut. And I'm thinking about, okay, this idea is a little bit more interesting and thought-provoking, right? So from what I understand, basically, if you were to waste the EX bar or something like that, you have this set amount of period of time where you can't be thrown, right? Because if the guy were to try to throw you, there's an explosion that occurs and both of you could be damaged or something like that, or just the guy could be damaged, right? And so, again, read exactly what he said, but my perspective on this is, okay, from one hand, I think if you're thinking about it meta-wise, right, how should I phrase this exactly? I don't want to become Joe Biden and trip over my words even more rambly than I already have. You know, I replied to a little bit of what he said, but so one of the problems I would say, or one of the good things, let's start off with the good thing. I think it's interesting if there is a meta where rolento for an EX bar or some sort of meter, let's say if he might do this when he's dying or some shit like that. If there's that mind game of rolento popped his EX bar or his super, whatever it might be, and because he popped this, you can't throw him to kill him. And so you want to either do a high-low mix-up to beat him. Maybe you'll have to try to break his guard or something like that. Maybe you'll have to try to chip him out. But the idea that you can't throw him to kill him anymore, right, I think is potentially interesting, right? Now, one of the problems potentially could be, and I'm going to give some solutions and I'm going to try to rework some of his ideas here, again, as far as I'm understanding them. One of the problems is, though, you want to be able to fathomably see this animation of you trying to throw the character, right? So there's a bit of a conundrum here, because if you pop the EX bar, if you pop the super or whatever, if there's some sort of timer, the opponent now knows he can't throw you, right? Do you see what I'm saying? And since he knows he can't throw you, although this is interesting from like a sort of psychological gameplay perspective, if we're thinking about the game actually being played, we will never actually see the throw, right? If we have seen him pop the EX bar, if we have seen him pop the super, whatever it takes, and now we know that if we throw him during this time limit, either he explodes or you both explode, whatever. Realistically, we're never going to see that animation, which is fun, right? Because we know he's already popped the bar. Did you get what I'm kind of saying? That you want to be able to see it, right? But since it would be cost an EX bar, whatever it might be, that animation of him, like, this is what I'm theorizing in my head when I'm like imagining what this guy is saying. I would imagine an animation, like say it's a super EX bar, and you see Rolento, he loosens the bombs on his chest or something, just a quick little animation. And then a timer counts down from 10 seconds, right? And then you theorize that if the guy were to try to grab you, there's a quick little animation of the guy grabbing Rolento. He pulls off the bombs. You both explode or just he explodes. That's kind of fun, but realistically speaking, we would never see that animation once we know it's a thing, which is bad, right? Because we want to be able to see that animation, correct? So what you would have to do is now we have to put in this stipulation that there can be no animation or no signal that you have activated this meter, right? You don't want to be able to see Rolento on his EX bar. You don't want to see, you're just during the match and you see one of his EX bars goes away. You don't want to see on his super bar that his super goes away. Because then once we realize that, we know what's in play. And although it's interesting you can't throw him now, realistically, we know we're never going to see that animation, right? So that's a problem. So we have to keep this a secret. So that would be a problem with trying to balance this, right? Because you'd have to give it some kind of command. And of course, characters are moving back and forth, jigging during a match, whatever it might be, doing whiff normals or whatever like that. So you'd have to give it some kind of command input, whatever. And although it won't actually take away the super or the EX bar, right? Once you do it, right? Because you don't want to show that it's in play, right? I mean, again, that's one of the problems, right? So, I mean, I would say that you would have to, like I'm trying to think of how to explain this. And I want to go back to the first example too, because I want to try to polish up this idea, the first one. I would say, because I think this would be too powerful, right? Because it's like you're either going one side or the other. I would think as an EX move, it would be too powerful, because then you could pop 5 theoretically, or just 3 right at the beginning of the round. And you could be like, oh, well, you can never be hit, right? Or you can never be thrown, right? Because you need it to be invisible. You need the activation to be invisible, because you want to have the plausibility that you can see the animation, the explosion, right? So I would say you would have to put in a stipulation that when Rolento does it, since it's invisible, God, I would say it might be too powerful for an EX move. You might have to make it like a super, right? So now Rolento, if he does this, although it doesn't take away the super automatically, that super is still stocked, right? And so now he can no longer use his super bar for the rest of the match until someone tries to throw him. Now, I know that might seem a little bit extreme, but it's hard for me to fathom this actually working. Like I said, I think it's a thought-provoking attack, but making it actually realistic that it can work both ways in a real match seems like a bit of a conundrum and seems sketchy. Although, again, I think the idea is curious. So, I mean, you could do something, again, maybe for a super, right? Because I think EX bar is not enough, right? That for a super, if you have the super, you can put in this input animation, And now the game will realize if you ever try to do super, the super's never going to come out. Make sure there's no bug like a Kim Stomp bug in 98 where you can cancel normals while trying to do a super. And since you can't do the super, he gets weird combos. Make sure there's no bug like that. But if you did something like that, I think that might work, right? Or there's some sort of stipulation that he can't use his supers, or maybe even a stipulation that he can't use his other bomb moves. Like I gave that one example of a EX bomb move. There's got to be a stipulation to it, another stipulation, because although it's an interesting idea, I don't think it works if you actually can see the animation, right? Do you get what I'm getting at? Again, I said it a few times now. If you can see the animation, it's only interesting from the standpoint that you can't throw him. And although I think that's kind of fun to think for 10 seconds at the end of the match that you can't throw him and you could only technically kill him from block damage or something like that, I just don't think it works. But if there's this idea that the opponent doesn't know that you've popped the super, and then only the opponent is watching 10 seconds on the clock. So either they know at that once about 10 seconds, they can throw the bombs and it's going to do an explosion. Or if the guy were to try to throw you, they blow up. I think that works. Now, I do want to touch upon one thing here. The idea that you both have to explode. I don't think that's necessarily true because let's say we have Ryu right here. Ryu tries to throw you and rolento. The idea that you both have to explode for a double KO doesn't necessarily make sense to me because you could say when the guy tries to throw you, whatever, assuming this throw break happen automatically, right? Rolento could go into a set animation where that animation has one frame of invincibility. Right? One frame. It's only one frame of invincibility. But when the guy throws you, right, he doesn't have that one frame of invincibility. So the explosion happens, right? But the opponent will always be hit one frame before you are. Thus, even though you both take damage, in the case of where you might think there might be a double KO scenario, that does not have to be the case because it will always hit the opponent one frame early. Now, to go to your second idea, to sort of add this into the first thing, what I do think to play around with your first idea, again, the idea that you could just be option selecting the whole time and, it never occurs unless you do it, terrible. I don't get your first idea at all. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? But to try to work around that, right, I do think you could do in terms of breaking a throw, let's go with the idea of popping something that you can't see. Maybe for an EX bar, we could say the super, the explosion happens immediately and the character gets hit or some shit, I guess, like that. Or rolento loosens the bomb, something like that. For an EX bar, and what you could do is if a throw break occurs. Now what I should say about this is if the guy tries to throw you or a throw break, yeah, it could be a throw or a throw break. If the guy were to throw you, you could say that let's say a bomb. What's a guy? Let's put like a little rolento right here. Rolento gets thrown. Maybe the throw's broke. Rolento gets thrown. He's on the ground. But if you have activated this EX move, whatever, let's just say that a little bomb falls from rolento. A little bomb falls off of rolento no matter what. Now, what this would do is and make it explode like 60 frames or something after that. That, at least theoretically, I could see something interesting where the opponent is like, normally when you throw the guy, oh, hey, I'm going to go for a cross-up attack. I'm going to go for my immediate attack. I'm going to start shooting fireballs at you. But you threw rolento and it loosened the fireball or the grenade and it falls off of him. He broke the throw. The grenade got loosened and trickles in front of him, or if he gets thrown and the grenade trickles in front of him, something like that. And then the opponent now, after throwing you, they have to jump away from you because then the bomb explodes. And so it keeps rolento safe from Okazeme, media attacks, whatever. That, I think you could theoretically do as a quirky EX move, right? I don't see the first thing you're saying because it never occurs unless it happens. And you're always at the advantage and it always hurts the guy. It doesn't theoretically makes sense to me. Something like this I could see you be doing. And for the second idea, if it's a super and you've given the stipulations that I've given, I think it could work. Something like that. Anyway. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share. Support the channel. If you have any other ideas for EX moves, we will discuss them on the FGC on NBC, and I will critique your ideas. The end.